We're having some technical problems with our chair, so I'm going to start the meeting. And this is the meeting of the Public Works and Transportation Committee for March 9th, 2021. Roll call and posting of the agenda.
Member Zaragoza,
Here.
Member Lopez,
Here.
we have a quorum.
Okay.
The agenda for this meeting was posted in the City Hall kiosk on Tuesday, March 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So follow me for the flag, a salute to our flag, please. And a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Bow your head for our people that are suffering with a pandemic, COVID-19, and the people that we've lost. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I don't have any. He's back, okay. Mr. Chairman, we're down to public comments.
Hello, Mayor.
Hello.
I had
We're down to
glitch.
public comments.
okay.
I don't think we have any public comments, right?
We have Mr. Stein.
Oh, Mr. Stein, Mr. Chair. And you can take over from there.
Mr. Stein, can you hear me? Are
I
you on
can
the
hear you.
line? Yes, sir. You
I'm
have
on the
3
line.
minutes. Perfect. Thank you. Go ahead.
I'm concerned, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, the fact you seem to be ignoring certain laws. Take the Prop 218. In reviewing the Public Works CIP projects for the Great Water Program, the funding all seems to be coming from the Water Fund. I question why the funding is coming from the Water Fund to repair the AWTF. The 40,000 ratepayers are not getting a direct benefit from the AWTF, so they should not be paying for the services to repair the AWTF. Likewise, you have a public works project involved with putting a pipeline that's going to cost us $10 million. That's going to benefit only the direct users of the Great Water. Why should the 40,000 ratepayers, the commercial industrial users, pay for the Great Water for this project when they do not get the benefit of the Great Water? Again, we're going to be spending $10 million on this project for the pipeline, and who's paying for it? People not getting the benefit of the water. Why aren't the people who are getting the direct benefit of the Great Water paying for the pipeline for Great Water? Again, this seems to be in violation of Prop 218. We now have a new public works director who's not aware of the issues that I've been bringing up the last 8 years on the Great Water Program. And he's going to be leaving us in a few months with a permanent public works director. I'm going to repeat these arguments all over again. The city seems to be breaking the law on Prop 218. The city attorney does not directly address this issue. Again, the Great Program is subsidized by the 40,000 ratepayers who are not getting a direct benefit from this. The water allocation is monopoly money. We're not getting a direct benefit from the allocation of the Great Water. There's some future benefit down the line. Prop 218 is very clear on the aspects of future benefits. We're not supposed to be getting future benefits, so this water allocation that's being given to us, we can't use because there's no water behind the allocation. Again, the general fund needs to be paying for these improvements, not the ratepayers who are paying into the water fund. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. Madam Clerk, do we have any more public speakers? It looks like
Yeah.
Mr. Portello.
Yes, we have Mr. Portello and we have Pat Brown. We're going to take Pat Brown next. One moment.
Thank you, and I'd like to thank the mayor for conducting it. I had some technical operator there.
Ms. Brown?
Thank you.
Ms. Brown, you may unmute by pressing *6.
Yes.
Ms. Brown,
this
yes,
my
thank
turn?
you. It is your turn. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Well,
I just wanted to take this time to thank you guys. Rice Avenue is just remarkable what you have had done there, and Rose Avenue near it, and Fifth Street east of the city. You have fixed those streets as well. We have been going with those with big, huge holes. I mean, they have been bad for a long time. Of course, all the trucks are over there, and that's where we want them to be. So, so they're doing what they're supposed to do, and I'm sure that they are all very, very happy also that it's all being corrected. And I just want to thank you guys. Nobody ever says anything about this, and I know that there's a lot of traffic going up and down all day, every single day and evening, and nobody ever thanks anybody for doing this, and it is just wonderful. Just thank you so much. I just don't know how to express it enough. It's if I was there, I would kiss you on the cheek. It's just marvelous. Thank you so much for having all this work done for everybody, and that includes everybody that was involved in taking care of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Brown, and the privilege of the chair here. Ms. Brown, I want to express my personal opinion on that. Very seldom do people say thank you. And we all know our moms and dads taught us to say thank you. It means something. But saying thank you to the people that are breaking their backs every day for the residents in this city, amid the challenges and the harangues and the accusations and the barbs and the false statements that come to those very same people busting their backs to take care of the city. Ms. Brown, you stand head and shoulders above the men and women that do that. Thank you from one councilman. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, do we have any more speakers on this matter?
We do not have any more speakers for public comments on non-agenda. However, we do have speakers for the next item, which is D1.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
We'll move to item D1. And again, I want to thank the mayor for handling it while I tried to overcome a technical problem here. The first item, Public Works Department, subject, update on the Renew Oxnard Community Outreach Program and Collaborative Governance Guide for the city's Landscape Maintenance District. The recommendation that the Public Works and Transportation Committee recommend that the City Council receive and file the staff report and update regarding the Renew Oxnard Community Outreach Program and the Collaborative Guidance Guide for the city's Landscape Maintenance District. Now, due to the voters approved Measure M, the pre-recording of this presentation was available. In my personal belief, I think that is a mistake and a disservice to the residents of Oxnard, and we're finding, I'm getting comments from more people realizing what they voted for is not what they expected. So do we have any questions with regard to the item? And in the midst of your first questions, committee members, we will take, if you have any clarification questions, we'll take public comment and then we'll go into discussion on the matter. Any questions, Madam Lopez? Councilmember Lopez. Any questions, Mayor?
No, we'll go ahead and wait for the speakers.
Okay, Mr. Partello, please.
Mr. Portello, you can go ahead and unmute.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. You have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Good evening, committee chair and committee members and staff. Most of us can agree Oxnard's public space landscaping is in bad shape. It got so bad, I formed a group of volunteers and went out raking leaves, removing dead bushes, trimming ivy, removing stumps, and doing some replanting. I've heard a number of excuses why this is so. Proposition 218, the fiscal crisis, increased costs, COVID, and on and on. What I did not know 5 months ago when I started my volunteer work to improve my neighborhood and others in Oxnard was the financial status of LMDs, and specifically related to administration fees and quote unquote special projects. Now that one caught my attention on the engineer's report because it was $15,000. The entire tax revenue for my LMD, Standard Pacific number 12, was $22,000. I had to dig a bit deeper to get to community outreach for CFDs. as the description of what those funds were used for. Having attended 2 of the Renew program meetings, I realized it was for this. When you're talking about an annual budget of $22,000, and then you take away $15,000 for this campaign to get us to do Mellarus and volunteers, it's ridiculous. Now we can understand why when we put in a request for one of the city's curbside trees in front of our homes to be trimmed, and then more than 2 years can pass before that's done, now we start to understand why. At one of the meetings, Pablo from NBS suggested that the perimeter landscaping, which we know is not included in the LMDs, was never intended to be funded by the general fund. Now that was surprising, given all the promises for enhanced landscaping, parks and streets with Measure O, and more recently with Measure E, increased tax revenue. You can't have it both ways. Either the general fund is not intended to pay for general use public landscaping, or the ballot measure propaganda was a big lie. It is now the intention of the city to abdicate its responsibility for this public service, now with the extra sales tax money secured, and replace it with Mellarus taxes? The 5-year plan did not have landscaping or parks on the list. Time for our city leaders to live up to their promises. One of those promises made at the Renew meeting was for transparency and
40
accountability.
seconds left.
We approved the Mellarus. Well, in a closed session, they voted to keep the LMD admin fees audit report secret. Bert Perella brought that up. Now we'd like to see it. That would be a first good step in regaining some trust. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing your views, Mr. Portillo, and you are correct. I did bring that up, and if you can convince a majority of council to bring it forward, you'll get it. In the past, there had been a minority of the council supporting that. Any more speakers, Madam Clerk?
Yes, our next speaker is Alicia Purcell. Ms. Purcell?
Go ahead, Ms. Purcell. And if the people that call in, if I can take a privilege of the chair here, if you would make sure your voice or your radio are turned down, the effect of your impact and what you're sharing with us would be much clearer to the public.
Ms. Purcell, you have 3 minutes to speak when you're ready.
Thank you. Good evening. I am an officer of Moving Oxnard Forward, an organization which keeps a close eye on developments at City Hall which impact the city's taxpayers and ratepayers. I've attended several of the meetings for the Renew Oxnard program, meetings between NBS, city staff, and residents who pay special tax assessments for their LMDs. I've heard many residents say in these meetings that they do not support converting their LMDs into CFDs and then paying Mellarus assessments, which is clearly the actual goal of this project. I've heard residents in these meetings object to the fact that their LMDs are being charged for the cost of the contract with NBS for this project, a project that they do not want. This project takes away from the LMDs funds which are dedicated to performing maintenance of the landscaping. NBS has confirmed that, yes, in fact, the LMDs are paying for their contract. Their entire project is for up to $403,650. The entire budget for all LMDs combined for the current fiscal year is just under $1.4 million. If fully carried out, this contract will consume 30% of an entire year's worth of LMD levies, rather than using those funds to actually maintain the landscaping. I think these residents have a pretty good point, one that this city should be listening to and one that has legal implications. LMDs are formed pursuant to the Landscaping and Lighting Act of 1972. If you review the act contained in the Streets and Highways Code, look specifically at section 22655. In describing the annual LMD levy and collection process, it puts tight restrictions on the use of these funds. This section says, and I quote, "The money shall be expended only for the improvements authorized for such district," end quote. Yet you are using these monies for another purpose, and I do not believe it complies with the law. I believe these funds are being wrongfully taken from the LMDs, and those monies need to be restored and used for their intended purpose. This is a lousy deal for the taxpayers, and it's a repeat offense given how the city has screwed over the LMDs in the past and never made them whole.
40 seconds left.
In 2017, city staff told the council that the city could not fund the CFD formation project. So in closing, I have 3 questions. 1, whose idea was it to make the LMDs pay for this project? 2, which city employee authorized using the LMD funds in this way? And 3, has the city attorney reviewed the legality of this plan? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Purcell, for sharing your views. The speaker had 3 questions, and I'm sure staff has written them down, and we'll get to those questions after we hear from other committee members. Do committee members have any questions or on this matter?
Yeah, Chair Perrello.
Yes, go ahead, Councilmember Lopez.
Thank you, and I do appreciate the comments from the speakers and their questions, and I do want to acknowledge that yes, we have been in a tough financial situation in the city, which has brought about a level of engagement and work, labor from our residents who are interested in maintaining our public ways and public spaces that they're all a part of in their neighborhood. So I do appreciate the work that our residents are doing on a daily or weekly basis to support ensuring that the city looks good. At the same time, I do acknowledge and recognize, as Mr. Perrello mentioned in the previous speaker's comments, our staff is definitely working very hard, and I do want to thank them for the work that they're doing, and under the current and limited circumstances that the city has faced. So I don't want to dismiss the work that is being done at this time. So and based on the fact that we couldn't hear the presentation live, to really complement the comments and this discussion makes it a lot more challenging to even have a conversation that flows. So I'm wondering if Ms. Cooper, if you wouldn't mind just kind of summarizing, what are we, focused on in this discussion, and the concerns that have been raised about the LMDs and this transition of the LMDs or CFDs, considering that the purpose of this program is really to bring back that renewed, as it is said, interest and participation from the public in the process.
Chair Perrello?
Yes.
Yes, we have one more public speaker, one more public comment for this particular agenda item.
Okay. Councilmember Lopez, would you like the question now, or it's your choice to hear the public speaker now? Would you like the question now, or it's your choice to hear the public speaker now? Would you like the question now, or?
We can allow the public speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. Very courteous and
We can allow the public speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. Very courteous and
Okay.
thank you for your kindness, Councilman Lopez. Go ahead with the public speaker, please.
Thank you. One moment.
Madam Clerk, thank you.
No, it's Mr. Partello. Mr. Partello, please unmute by pressing *6. Mr. Hamm? Mr. Hamm, you may unmute by pressing *6.
Okay, hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
You have 3 minutes to speak when you're ready.
All right, thank you. My name is Charles Hamm. I'm an Oxnard real estate broker. First, thank you to Ms. Cooper for the Measure M video presentation. I find these videos helpful and the advanced preparation helpful. I reviewed it and she did a good job. Thank you. I began looking into the Civic Mic service being provided for Oxnard LMDs. At that time, I started to look into this because it seems strange to me that Civic Mic, an entity owned by NBS, was in the business of doing public outreach and surveying residents to see if they want to voluntarily create Mello-Roos districts, like Mr. Partello said. But as a real estate broker in Oxnard, it's my experience that people avoid Mello-Roos districts, not volunteer to create them or increase their taxes. Those things like taxes and Mello-Roos districts they go contrary to what Civic Mic has been claiming. That doesn't help property values to be adding higher taxes or Mello-Roos. Those are things that you want to not have. So that's why this so-called service seemed strange to me initially as a real estate broker. Civic Mike is NBS Government Finance Group. They're the same entity. They're basically a Wall Street SEC regulated finance firm in the business of selling bonds. My first thought, how can a Wall Street firm selling bonds be a neutral party on the subject of consulting the city on the creation of districts when they will later sell bonds to the districts in the city? So I looked at the contract. I read the NBS contract with the city. The contract itself states in the language of the contract that there is a conflict of interest for the reasons I stated. The city doesn't seem to be bothered by that. The real kicker to me is the city is funding the NBS contract through the LNDs, like it's already been stated. You can't use LND money to do public outreach to check to see if residents want to form a different district. LND funds are just like the city's wastewater funds. They're restricted for the purpose for which the funds were raised. The city draws those funds from property taxes for landscape maintenance, but the city has been transferring those funds illegally. I've seen records showing the transfer of LND funds for public outreach, not landscape maintenance. These transfers were specifically for public outreach and surveys to ask to see if residents want to complete a completely new Melrose district to raise more money for the city. That doesn't seem right to me. Lastly, I think we need to make the NBS audit public. On January 23rd, 2017, City Council voted 3-2 to keep it secret. We need that audit report. My request is that you get this back on the City Council agenda and make it public. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hamm. Just so that you get the facts are right. The item was heard in closed session. To remove it from closed session requires a majority of the council. So an individual council member could put it on the agenda, but it is because it was in closed session, it requires a majority of council to discuss it. Before this item is done, I hope we will have the city attorney weigh in on if I'm right or I'm wrong. And I've been known to make a mistake.
Yeah,
Thank you for sharing your views.
Mr. Chair, I know that.
Well, Mayor, let's go back to Ms. Madam, beg your pardon, Ms.
Lopez.
Council Member Lopez. You had a question for Ms. Cooper. Can Ms. Cooper please address your questions, or better yet, can you please restate your questions so that because we've had a little lack of continuity here.
That's okay, Mr. Perello. I was referencing to the fact that we didn't have the presentation follow in the conversation. So I think it creates that gap in information. So I was asking Ms. Cooper if she could just kind of summarize, what we're discussing here and what the next steps are based on the comments that were shared by the public.
Go ahead, Ms. Cooper. And again, thank you very much for everything you're doing. And ladies and gentlemen that are watching this, you have no idea the pressure that people who are in the position that Ms. Cooper is in are under. Go ahead, Ms. Cooper.
Thank you, committee members, Mayor, Chair Perello, Councilmember Lopez. So to summarize, the Renewal Oxnard program was initiated to address deficiencies within 27 landscape maintenance districts throughout the city of Oxnard. All of these landscape maintenance districts were authorized through development agreements and were formed in perpetuity for the maintenance of these neighborhoods so that the city's general fund did not have to have that obligation for the life of those neighborhoods. When Prop 218 passed in 1996, it limited cities' abilities to raise taxes on those landscape maintenance districts, which put 27 districts in situations that did not allow us to raise funds for rising costs of maintenance. Inflation, utility rates going up, things like that. Due to this fact, we have a number of deteriorating districts that are currently at an F level of service, quarterly service, for large portions of their neighborhood because their landscape maintenance districts simply cannot fund it. Additionally, in 2017, the there was a general benefit study done, and exterior improvements of major thoroughfares were removed from these landscape maintenance districts. So some of the 27 districts that are engaged in the Renew Oxnard program may not be limited in funding, but they do have limitations because their exterior improvements were removed. And we wanted to provide them with potential solutions for adding those exterior improvements back in. Contrary to what Mr. Portello and the other speakers have said, Renew Oxnard program is not just about forming a new Melrose district to help fund these LMDs. We are presenting multiple options for these residents in these districts, one of which is a Melrose district. Others include potential homeowners associations taking over landscaping within their districts, community outreach days and volunteerism, nonprofits set up to allow for other entities to work through a maintenance service agreement in these city areas. So we are really looking at all ways that could potentially benefit these residents in these neighborhoods. It's not just about getting more taxes, but frankly, there are many neighborhoods and many residents that would rather pay some additional fees within their district to have the maintenance taken care of. So we're presenting all of those options. Mr. Portello referred to the $403,000 that is authorized in the Third Amendment to the NBS contract that was presented and approved by council. And all of our contracts are looked at through the city attorney's office. So they have been reviewed by the city attorney's office. And that $403,000 is just an allocation within the contract. So we identified a number of LMDs that we were going to reach out to initially. That $400,000 also includes if that particular district was ready to form a Melrose district and the bonding process for those new non-bonded CFD formations. So we don't necessarily anticipate spending that kind of money on the totality of this program. We have been working with the residents of these landscape maintenance districts, many of whom are very engaged with the process and are open to different options. Yes, there are people that don't want Melrose districts, and we want them as stakeholders and community participants for a solution for their neighborhood. So there are fees associated with the consulting costs to have the NBS, their public outreach arm, Civic Mike, work with the residents. And that is considered an improvement for that district. It is a public improvement because we are looking for ways to improve the maintenance through collaborative governance. Let's see, and Mr. Hamm indicated about NBS selling bonds. To my knowledge, NBS does not sell bonds. They do work with us in the city to form bonded and non-bonded districts, but they don't sell the bonds. We work with the city's financial advisor for the sale of bonds, and that is not NBS.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cooper. I do see a hand up from the city manager, Mayor. Can I ask the city manager if he wants to make a comment now or wait till after you're done?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Ms. Cooper, thank you for that summary and explanation. I think that makes it a lot more clear. I just want to comment in my response to the public commenter. So it's understandable for people who don't believe in doing any additional taxation and are opposing this endeavor process. That's fine, but the narrative that you spin still has to include all the facts, and you can't ignore the history of these LMDs, right? All of these LMDs were formed when the respective housing developments were formed. They would not have been built without these districts. Now, we've done our best to make it clear to everyone The problem with the way these districts were formed and laws that came afterward is essentially they're frozen in time in the sense of what they generate each year. They're frozen in time with the amount, and those amounts, some of them are quite small, simply can't afford to keep up with the routine maintenance required for the respective neighborhood. So the process here, the whole endeavor is to fix this. And what we're doing with this process is providing options for each of these LMDs to find a path forward that they want. So, and some of that might include doing something different. It might include doing nothing. It may include certain neighborhoods joining together so they can get a larger assessment and everyone pays a little less. But the neighbors are going to make these informed decisions, and they will understand if they don't want to do anything different, then the maintenance is actually only going to be the equivalent of what they have each year now. So, I mean, the cost of everything, labor, fuel, buying a new lawnmower, a leaf blower, those costs today are very different than they were in the 1970s, right? So this overall endeavor here is to bring everything, to modernize everything, but providing choices for each neighborhood. And again, people, in the end, there's nothing that can be changed without the vote of the residents. Whatever the changes that is being proposed by whether it's by consensus or any majority of residents, still has to be voted on by said facility district, landscape maintenance neighborhood. The neighbors still have to vote on it. But we're pursuing a process to explain the situation and to provide genuine options, neighborhood by neighborhood. So now, as Ms. Cooper stated, some neighbors are opposed, and that's fine. And some neighbors are for it, and that's fine. And then there will be neighbors who oppose it for different reasons or support it for different reasons, or there will be neighbors who want different levels of service. That'll all shake out in this process. Thank you.
I'd just like to reiterate, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Cooper, the original development, the original people that bought the original homes when they were brand new, they had nothing to do with creating the CFD LMDs. This was a deal that was entered into by a developer and agreed to by the city of Oxnard. Is that
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And when the city manager mentioned that these decisions, any future decision regarding these specific districts will be decided by vote, is that a vote of residents or a vote of property owner in the district?
It is a 2/3 registered voter vote within the maintenance district boundaries. So a CFD is different than a landscape maintenance district. Landscape maintenance district would be 2/3 residential vote. However, landscape maintenance districts are not formed anymore. Community facilities districts are what are now formed for maintenance in perpetuity, and that requires a 2/3 registered voter vote in the boundary. So it could be a homeowner, it could be a renter. If they are registered at the address within the district, their vote counts.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cooper. I appreciate your explanation. I appreciate the clarification from the city manager. Mayor, you had comments you wanted to make.
Yeah, basically, the question I had was answered because Ms. Cooper, right on in the report, the desired outcomes that the city wants is whether the residents of the LMDs make the choice to convert into a special financing district or agree to other ways of ensuring maintenance of their neighborhoods. And the desired outcome comes out of the Renew Oxnard program. So they make the choice. They make the choice whether they want to go to a CFD or so forth. On the CFD, my understanding is that if you go with the renters, it's 50%. Excuse me, with the landlords, it's 50%, and if you go with the renters, it's 2/3. Is that correct?
No. For a CFD, it is a required 2/3 registered voters
Regardless.
regardless within the district boundaries. And one thing I did want to mention as well, that the city manager did mention, we have grouped a number of the underfunded landscape maintenance districts together in an effort to have economies of scale. So as your district becomes larger, you have more parcels that are paying into that maintenance, which in fact could reduce the amount of money that each parcel is paying, and would also reduce any costs per district for obligations towards the bonding process. So if the bonding process is $50,000, but you have 5 districts that are in that new district that you're trying to form, each district would only be responsible for $10,000. If one district wanted to reform, they would have to shoulder that full cost. So we're trying to make economies of scale to save the residents and save the district's money as well.
And also, I think you mentioned in your report that there's some districts that their funding is very minimal, and there's not enough funding in there for them to maintain that LMD. Is that correct?
Very much so. We have a number of districts that are barely squeaking by with their ability to pay F level of service within their district, which is quarterly maintenance once every 3 months. And so some of those districts we are unable to engage because we don't have the funding to be able to do that.
Will that CFD correct that, the funding concern?
Yes. Yes, a CFD would correct that.
And the other question, Mr. Chair, the question I had, and I think you answered it, Mrs. Cooper, was Mr. City Attorney, is that the conversion that we're talking about might be illegal. And I think you probably mentioned that it's not, because we're not, borrowing money, or we're just kind of looking at different choices.
Yeah, so we're not borrowing money. Each district participating within the Renewal Oxnard program is contributing to consultant service fees. And these consultant service fees are in direct support of maintenance within these districts. We are trying to find a way to get these residents better services, whether it is through a new CFD, a volunteer group, a nonprofit, or an HOA taking over maintenance, or at the end of the day, like the city manager said, they can elect to do nothing, but we are providing them detailed information about their options and their choices.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, there were no other public comments on this matter?
We do not have any additional public comment on this particular item, but we do have public comment on D2, the next item.
Okay, thank you. I would just like to address some of the concerns that Ms. Purcell brought up. She wanted to know whose idea it was, who has the intent, and the city attorney. I believe that they were answered in the presentation. But if I'm correct, and staff, city attorney, I hope will weigh in on this, the council voted to approve this process. Is that a correct statement?
That is correct.
Okay. And when it says whose idea it was staff brought it to the council and the council voted to move forward with this. Is that correct?
Correct. It was a collaboration with staff for solutions for these neighborhoods.
And we had, I'd just like to add, we had neighborhoods creating a lot of interest in getting something done to improve what the situation it is. And I'd like the city attorney to weigh in on this one, please, Ms. Cooper. And everything that is being going forward, contrary to some of the comments that were made, is legal. City attorney.
Good evening, Chair Perello, Paul Early, Assistant City Attorney. As you know, these contracts were entered before my tenure, but they are routinely policy that all contracts are reviewed by the City Attorney's Office and approved as to form before they are executed by the city. With respect to the question about in general, is it appropriate to use district funds for the hiring of a consultant in this nature? I would say absolutely yes. It provides a direct benefit to the district. It's fundamental to the survival of the district. It's provide whether or not choices for the district. These are not issues that benefit the city writ at large. Therefore, I believe it's an appropriate expenditure.
Thank you very much, Mr. Early. I would like to thank Ms. Cooper and Mr. Early for their comments and the city manager, but I would also like to thank every member of the public that took the time to share their views with us. Sometimes they need and we need corrections. Now, with respect to my comment about an individual wants the audit on the agenda, is there someone that can address that matter, or do we bring it to a committee meeting later on? With respect to the audit that was heard in closed session, and it did not get support from the full council to put it back into open session.
Mr. Chair, I'll address that, even though that was also before my time, but much earlier than Mr. Early's time. My
Yes,
understanding.
I understand that, but this is quite some time ago.
Yes. So my understanding is that the council did not give authority to waive the confidentiality of that report.
Thank you very much. And that's exactly how I recall it also. Do we have a recommendation from the committee? Does somebody have a action?
If it's a receive and file, do we need to?
Second.
Yeah, I'll move it. Mhm.
Okay, roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Lopez,
Yes.
Councilmember Zaragoza,
Yes.
Chair Perillo.
Yes. And
Motion
again, thank you
passes.
thank you to all the members. I beg your pardon, Madam Clerk. I stumbled over I tripped over your second. Go ahead, Madam Clerk. I'm sorry. You were going to announce a vote.
My apologies. Yes.
No, it's mine. It was my fault, Madam Clerk. I apologize. Please announce the vote.
Yes, the motion carries 3-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. And I would like to thank all the public speakers, but I would seriously hope that the thank you from this chair, and I believe I can speak for the committee, for the staff that is working on this item. This is a very sensitive item. And when there have been members of the public that have reached out to me on this item, and they have complained that no members of the public are showing up at these meetings, I don't know what else we can do to get people more involved, because the public needs to know what's going on. And this Measure M, in my opinion, has not helped the situation. Thank you. Moving on to the next item. The next item, number 2.
Chair, I think Ms. Cooper raised her hand.
Okay, beg your pardon, Ms. Cooper. Your microphone.
Sorry, real quick, Chair. I just want to let you know and the committee know that if at any time you would like a list of the number of residents that are showing up to these meetings, I can provide that to you. And if you are receiving complaints that people are not engaged, I can tell you that out of the 6 meetings that we had, there were only one meeting that had less than 20 residents in, and we had one meeting that had over 65. So we are getting engagement, and I can provide those figures to you if you would like them.
I think that would be useful, and I really appreciate you sharing that information now. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Cooper. Moving to item number 2. The item number 2, the subject is agreement for professional services for the Edding Road Bicycle and Pedestrian Facilities Installation, PW 21-34, and the Oxnard Boulevard Bikeway Gap Closure Class 1 Bike Path, PW 21-36. The recommendation that the Public Works and Transportation Committee recommend that the City Council, and there are 3 parts to this item. Number 1, approve and authorize the mayor to execute agreement A-8300 with Hewitt Zollard Incorporated in the amount of $189,565 for plan specifications and estimates for the Edding Road Bicycle and Pedestrian Facilities Installation Project 203104. And number 2, approve and authorize the mayor to execute agreement A-8301 with Hewitt Zollard Incorporated in the amount of $139,873 for plan specification and estimates for the Oxnard Boulevard Bikeway Gap Closure Class 1 Bike Path Project 213104. And part number 3, approve a budget appropriation of $108,522,000 from Transportation Development Article 8A Fund 212 to Edding Road Bicycle and Pedestrian Facilities Installation Project 203104. Recognize and appropriate $98,000 from the State Active Transportation Program Grant Fund, Fund 210, and $55,861 from Transportation Development Act, Article 8A Fund 212 to Oxnard Boulevard Bikeway Gap Closure Path, Bikeway Gap Closure Class 1 Bike Path Project 213104. This item was available on the internet due to the Measure M approval by the voters, and there will be no presentation, which is extremely unfortunate for the people that are watching this, but that was the will of the voters. In my opinion, a mistake. We have questions, and it appears Ms. Tatiana Aronov, city engineer, will be addressing this. Do we have any questions of the item by specific questions about the item before we take public comment on this matter by the committee members? I see no from Councilman Lopez and Mayor. No. Okay, thank you. Do we have public comment on this, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Chair, we have 3.
Okay, please let them know. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Barbara Macri Ortiz, you may unmute by pressing *6.
Good
Hello?
evening.
Yes, good evening. Thank you. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay, thank you. And Chair Perello, first I just want to say I agree with you with respect to the Measure M. It's actually a lot more work to try to figure out what's going on, and you don't get any coverage at the meeting, so it is difficult. I agree. And maybe at some point we can figure out how to get out of this. I have some specific questions with respect to the Edding Road project. What I understand is that the project is going to be for planning for the curb, gutter, sidewalk, and bike lanes. And my question is exactly where on Edding Road will this be? What section or sections of Edding Road? Which side of the street? You know, where is this work going to be done? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Macri. Thank you for sharing your views. Staff is making notes of this. We'll go to the next speaker, please.
Mr. Hernandez, you may unmute by pressing *6. Hello? Mr. Chris Hernandez, are you there?
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes, hi. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, thank you. This is Chris Hernandez, Vice Chair of the Five Points Neighborhood Council. I'd like to start off by saying good evening, City Manager, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and City Council. I want to start off by saying I think it's a great idea that the bike lanes and sidewalks are being added at Edding Road. I'm very familiar with the area, and one of the things that I can't help but notice is that there's a lot of cars parked on the side of the road. In the pictures shown from the presentation, you can see quite a few cars parked along the road right there. So the question I ask is, how is this going to affect the residents living on Olds Road in front of the school? Have you guys thought about this? And what do you think about the outcome will be to this? And is there any solution to that? Moving on to the Oxnard Boulevard pathway, again, a great project and addition to that area. Now, it was listed that there would be ADA access ramps, a sidewalk, striping, and signage included in the scope of the project. I'm sure these are just some of the things included in the project, but I would like to know if there are going to be lights along the pathway and if there will be a fence for safety, because I've seen cars drive on that path and I wouldn't want a car driving to the bike path when it's built. If there will be lights and a fence, will it be covered by the TDA? My last question, now that we are on the bike lane topic, um, when can we get a bike lane on South Oxnard Boulevard, turning into the one highway at the 5 Points Northeast area? That's just my last question. Thank you. I'll be in touch.
I have a question, Mr. Hernandez, before you get off. You said, will it be covered by the TVA? What do you mean by the TVA?
By the TDA, the what is it? The transportation, the grant, one of the grants.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the clarification, and thank you for sharing your views.
Thank you.
And the next speaker, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Stein? Chair?
Yes.
Pat Brown was our next public speaker, and she's not available at this time.
Okay. So there's no other speakers waiting?
No, not at this time. Thank
Okay.
you.
I appreciate and thank you for the clarification, Madam Clerk. Okay, we've had some questions from the speakers. Can staff address some of those questions before we get into a discussion by committee members? Thank you.
Yes, Chair Perello, Mayor and Councilmember Lopez. So to address Barbara's question on where on Edding Road this will be, so it's located from Pleasant Valley Road to the end of the mobile home park along Edding Road in front of the junior high school. And the site of the road for the sidewalk itself will depend on the utility relocations that will be required in that area. So we don't know at this time where that will be, but that's going to be dependent on that. And as far as the bike lanes, at this time, it's anticipated that there will be a bike lane on each side of the road for the Edding Road project. To address Chris's comments about the impacts to the parking in that area. So that is absolutely something that we're aware of, and we will be considering that in the design in order to minimize those impacts as much as we can. But again, that hasn't been resolved yet. That's why we're trying to enter into these agreements with these design consultants to help us navigate through these issues that these residents have raised. And also for Chris's comment on the Oxnard Boulevard regarding the fence itself, at this time, that would be completely dependent on right-of-way constraints. So I can't say right now whether or not we will be able to put in a fence there along with the bike path that we're planning to install. But that is something that we're looking to do if the right-of-way constraints are able to be resolved. And yes, the TBA funding could cover these costs. And as far as the lighting goes, that's something we'll be looking into. But right now, it's not necessarily anticipated, but it's something we're aware of for the entire La Colonia neighborhood. We know lighting is an issue there, so this is something that we're taking pretty seriously. And then as far as bike lanes over down at I believe he was referring to the 5 Points intersection. At this time, we do not have any funding in place to be able to install any of those facilities there, but that is something that we can look into. And in fact, we are looking at the city as a whole and where we can install these bike routes, and 5 Points would be one that we would be taking into consideration. But at this time, there are no plans.
Thank you very much, Ms. Arnett. Just a clarification on specifically the comments about lighting. We're talking about the street overhead lights, or we're talking about lighted lights, smaller ones along the bike path? I should have asked.
I believe.
But I
no,
didn't.
that's a great question. I would assume that he's referring to the smaller lighting that would be found on the bike path just north of where we're trying to put this and what we're trying to connect to. There's lighting there now, so we would be doing something similar if it's possible.
Okay, thank you very much, and I appreciate the presentation. Do we have comments by the committee members? Mayor, go ahead.
Yeah, Tatiana, the question I have is, and this was probably answered. We're going to have a bike path going from Cooper Road to Colonia Road. Is that going to connect? Is that going to connect to the one that runs all the way to Gonzalez Road? Cover that gap?
Yes, Mayor. So it actually goes from Cooper Road all the way up to Camino del Sol.
Camino
So that's where the community garden is, where the current bike path ends.
and that ties up, connects there. Anyway.
To Gonzalez.
And
That's
the que-
correct.
And the question, I think Chris might have asked that, is there going to be a fence between the bike path and the railroad? From
That completely depends on the right-of-way constraints. So I can't tell you at this time if we'll actually be able to install that in there. But if it's possible, then yes, that's something that we would be doing.
So the question, and I hate to even say this, is there a liability there because there's no fence for the city?
Yes.
So
yes.
Okay, that would be a concern too. So thank you for that. Mm-hmm.
Committee Member Lopez.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ms. Arnaud, for the presentation and the answering those questions. So I certainly, bike lanes, I think last week at our council meeting, we did hear concerns just in general about the safety of not only pedestrians, but those, bicycle riders. So it's great to see that there is progress being made and adding, bike lanes and making them more visible. And certainly to Mr. Hernandez, comments about adding bike lanes. I appreciate your question because I certainly have heard, from residents, at least in South Oxnard as well, who are interested in seeing more. And I think it's all about design, space, parking, the how wide the streets are. So I know that those are all factors, but there certainly is an interest in the community and in having safer bike routes available. So I'm glad to hear that is in conversation and part of the process. Very technical question that I have on I'm not sure if I missed it anywhere, for the bike lane on Edding Road. Are we transitioning to like the green painted bike lane? And that seems to be coming up a lot more in other areas.
So at this time, it's a bike path. So it won't necessarily be, so it'll have its own basically right of way that's exclusive for the bicyclist. So typically speaking, you won't be putting that green paint there. Where we try to lay down the green paint is where you'll have conflict zones. So for instance, if somebody's trying to move, a vehicle's trying to move over into a right-hand turning pocket and crossing over a bike lane, we'll go ahead and put in the green paint there to signalize that this is a bike lane and there might be a bicyclist there for you to look out for. You could see that over at, Vineyard and Oxnard Boulevard. And so we'll be adding green paint in any of those conflict zones, but not necessarily the whole thing. And that also has to do with funding constraints. Laying down that green pavement is actually pretty expensive. So we're trying to be strategic about where we put it, while also trying to increase the safety of our cyclists.
Great, thank you for that answer. And then more generally, considering that one of these projects is near a school, and we saw in the last year, some unfortunate incidents in the Colonia area around schools. So just generally, where would we rate the safety of bike lanes, crosswalks around this, the schools that are in the city, just kind of place that I don't mean to put you on the spot to answer it, completely, but just kind of came to mind in this report and the presentation.
So we do have an item coming before council in April regarding this topic in general. So we did receive some grants for some local roadway safety plans, as well as a sustainable transportation planning project. Well, we'll be analyzing a lot of these things. And so I'll be able to bring more information, more detailed information before you in April regarding those issues.
Great, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Mayor.
Yeah, one more question, Tatiana. The bike paths are required as part of the TDA funding?
So TDA funding is typically used for this type of improvement, yes, or at least for transit as well. So it depends on what article we're looking at, but for this flavor of funding, yes, it would be used for bike and ped projects.
It's a requirement for okay, thank you.
On this specific thing about the colored paint and the green, I often traverse through the Oxnard Boulevard Vineyard Avenue area, and I do see the colored stripes, and it's very it jumps out at you night and day. You can see it. Your headlights are working. The one thing that I can tell you from just being a driver of a vehicle, not a bicycle rider, the people on bicycles, sometimes they take a lot for granted when they don't look to their left that somebody is not going to turn in front of them, not because they want to hit them, but because they don't see them. And as the cars are coming to a decelerating, coming to a slow, the bicycle is speeding up to get to the corner of the intersection. And whenever it comes a couple of tons versus 200 pounds or 300 pounds, we can all figure out who wins and who loses. I appreciate the work. I appreciate the presentation, and I appreciate the personality and the outcome and the answering of our city's engineer, Tatiana Aeronaut, on this. Do we have a recommendation by the city council, by the city committee of public works and transportation?
I'll move the recommended action.
Second, and that's for item 1, 2, and 3. Right?
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. Madam Clerk, can you take the roll, please?
Chair Perrello,
Yes.
Councilmember Zaragoza,
Yes.
Councilmember Lopez.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Clerk. The next item, number 3, is a Public Works Department. The subject, Community Facilities Districts, commonly referred to as CFDs, reserve studies. The recommendation that the Public Works and Transportation Committee recommend that the City Council receive and file the reserve studies for Westport CFD 2 and Seabridge CFD 4 and River Park CFD 5. Again, this item is available as a video presentation, and because of Measure M, apparently the person making the presentation, if there are questions, will be Mr. Howlett. Do we have any public speakers on this, Madam Clerk?
No, not at this time.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the committee?
No.
Okay, do we have a recommendation then?
Move approval.
Second.
Roll call?
Councilmember Lopez,
Yes.
Mayor Zaragoza,
Yes.
Chair Perrello.
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Moving on to item number 4, Public Works Department. Subject, agreement for supplemental waste transfer hauling services for the Del Norte Regional Recycling and Transfer Station. The recommendation that the Public Works and Transportation Committee recommend that the City Council approve and authorize the mayor to execute agreement number A-8291 with Echo Transport LLC for an amount not to exceed $4 million for a 3-year term ending March 1, 2024, to provide supplemental waste transfer hauling services for the Del Norte Regional Recycling and Transfer Station. And again, ladies and gentlemen, this was a presentation that the public could have seen, and if there had not been a voter approved Measure M, we would have a presentation by staff. As it is now, if there are questions, Mr. Yanes is apparently the designated person to do that. Again, I believe that the public is ill-served by this Measure M and the lack of being able to have a presentation and dialogue here about the presentation. Do we have any public speakers, Madam Clerk?
We do have Miss Pat Brown. Unfortunately, she's not available at this time.
Okay.
That would have been our only public comment for this item.
Okay. Before the item ends, if she does get in touch with us, we would definitely allow her to speak. Do we have any questions by the members of the committee on this matter?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Mayor.
I just want to share, that I'm sure that this supplemental waste transfer hauling service is really important to all of us because, as you can see, it's 180,000 tons that are generated per year from our residents here in Oxnard. So they haul a significant amount of refuse for us, as a supplemental waste transfer hauling service. So I think it's something that's needed, and I'm sure that they've been doing that for quite a while. I think Todd mentioned in his presentation, we've been doing this since 1996 or so, in the 90s, using a supplemental hauling transfer service. So again, I think it's good. And there's hauling of organic products and other products that are being transferred.
Thank you. Councilmember Lopez, do you have any comments? Okay, I would just like to address this for the public. Mr. Nianis, there is a limit to the amount of trash that can be kept overnight at the Del Norte site. And one of the problems with that is because the stream of refuse ebbs and flows during various times of the year, we need to get the material out because we would be in violation if we kept too much material on site. And even with the amount of trucks and fleet that we have, sometimes there's a need for the supplemental, or if something breaks down, something goes wrong, or if there has to be shipping to quite some distance, the turnaround time would be less and we wouldn't be able to get these things done during the operations of the MRF. Is that a fair statement, Mr. Yanis?
Good evening, Chair and committee members. This is Brian Yanis, Assistant Public Works Director. I'm going to go ahead and let Todd Housley answer that question, our Environmental Resources Manager, who's here with us tonight. Go ahead, Todd.
Thank you, Chewbacca.
Is my mic funny? Sorry.
Yeah. It is good to have a little humor sometimes in these public works meetings. Thank you.
I can answer like Yoda if you want.
No, we can't get that. We have to get serious. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Todd Vasquez Housley, Environmental Resources Division Manager. You're correct. We do have a mandate to move waste within a certain period of time. We like to get waste turned over and to our processors within 24 hours. That's not always possible, but no more than 48 hours. The reason for that is that it putrefies, it attracts vermin, it attracts birds, causes odor problems. And you're also correct, the rate that the waste comes into the facility does change daily. It's within a range of about 1,000 to 1,100 tons per day normally. But your statement is correct, Chair Perello.
Thank you very much. Any questions with respect to that, Council committee members?
No,
no. Okay, do we have a recommendation?
Move approval.
We have a motion by Mayor Zaragoza.
Second.
Okay, Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Lopez,
Yes.
Chair Perello,
Yes.
Mayor Zaragoza.
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Mr. Yanes and Mr. Vasquez Housley for the information and the help in this item. Thank you very much. Moving to the next item, number 4, Public Works Department. The subject, the Channel Islands Water Quality and Quality Assurance Project Plan Report. The recommendation that the Public Works and Transportation Committee recommend that the City Council receive and file a report on water quality monitoring efforts in the Channel Islands Harbor and provide staff with comments. Again, this is a pre-recorded presentation due to Measure M. There will be no presentation here. If there are questions, Mr. Steve Howlett will be addressing it. And again, people don't like me saying it, but I believe that the Measure M will serve the public for them to find out what's going on. Not everyone has the time or the inclination or the knowledge of how to go and find these things. So I hope that we can do something in the future to address that. Are there any public speakers on this matter, Madam Clerk?
No, we do not have any public speakers.
Okay. Are there any specific questions of the committee?
Yes,
Go
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Madam Lopez.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Howlett, for the presentation. So there, it was mentioned that the aerators, I mean, those were installed with the intent to possibly help the water in the harbor. But in the presentation, you mentioned that it didn't appear that there was much of a difference in what it was doing. So I'm just wondering, what is the benefit in keeping those running, or is there another purpose to them?
Yeah, it can't be explained as to why there was no measurable difference when they took the aerators out of service for maintenance of why there wasn't a change in the oxygen levels. However, the aeration of water is a very common practice. You'll see it in most golf courses or open waterways. It's a good way to oxygenate the water and prevent algae from building up. So we can't explain why we didn't have a change in the results, but we just kept them going as a precaution.
Okay, thank you. And so my understanding in terms of what this the data that has been collected is really to inform the possibly adding the water body to the list of the state's impaired and threatened water bodies that could support possible funding in the future. Is this the only a piece of information or a piece of data criteria that will be considered in that process? Is there anything else that we can do as a city, as a council, to possibly encourage this being added to the list?
At this time, this is just a series of data collections. So it's going to be measuring the water quality over a period of time. So right now we've only completed 2 samplings and it'll be going into the 3rd. One of the potential benefits is that, yes, it could be listed on the state's list of impaired water bodies, but the ultimate goal is that we determine what the impurities are that are in the water and what the source of them are, and then working together to find solutions to this situation.
Okay. So in terms of this, with the collection of data, it's been done in periods of time. So when could we expect a final collection, or is it an ongoing process?
Jerry could probably answer this a little in more detail because she has been working very closely with our volunteers who have been going out and taking the water samples and coordinating to make sure that those samples are being handled and tested properly. So do we have a sunset on this, Jerry?
So for the 303D impaired water body list, we have already submitted data, continuous monitoring data from our remote sensors, 4 that were installed in the water over the previous year, along with the sinks and nutrient study that we did with ABC Labs in 2019. So that data is what is being used currently for consideration. The current process of data collection is being funded through the swamp contract through the state of California, and it is for 1 year at this point. So it'll be a year of data collection, and then the state, LA Regional Water Quality Board, and swamp will decide if they want more data. But this current data set is not going to be considered within the 2024 303D listing. I'm sorry, 2022 303D listing. That is what we've already submitted is what's going to be considered.
Got it. Thank you. That's helpful.
Mayor, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, Jerry, what are the pollutants is the ag fields, the discharge of from the ag fields. And so you're collecting data from that for those deposits from the data fields, from the ag fields that are surrounding the canal.
Yes, we do have 3 data collection locations in the Edison Canal. Our clean water team volunteers that are comprised of residents from Westport, Seabridge, Mandalay Bay, and Harbor Island deploy in their kayaks up the canal and have specific GPS locators at near the Doris and 5th Street drains where they do sample collection.
Yeah, and everything's been funded by the 3 entities there, right?
Yeah, so the lab analysis is being funded by the swamp contract through the state of California. Aquatic Bioassay Laboratories is doing the consulting services, the remote sensor monitoring and bacteria analysis for us. And that is being paid for funding through both the general fund and the 4 waterways assessment districts based on a percentage funding split that was approved by the city council and approved by the Channel Islands Neighborhood Council group.
And last question I have, Mr. Chair, is the potentially with the as spring and summer approach, will it get worse than it is now?
It can. It can.
Because
So part of our mitigation efforts within the canal and the waterways include algae removal. You may remember from my presentation for the on-call debris removal services contract for Harbor Offshore. Part of that is to remove that algae that grows when the temperatures get warmer, the water gets warmer, and those nutrient-loving plants start to grow. So we do try to remove surface algae so that it does not die and fall to the bottom of the canal, causing a lower dissolved oxygen.
Because the algae loves that sun coming through.
Yes, yes, it does.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. With respect to the questions the mayor asked and the agricultural things, there's been identified some irrigation districts. I think Oxnard Irrigation District 1 or District 2. Have we been able to get in contact with any representatives from them to respond to any questions we may have?
We are currently working.
That may be something that the attorney wants to address or the city manager.
Yeah, I'm Paul Early and I have been working with Jan Hauser on a new Oxnard Drainage District 1 contract. We also have an upcoming meeting later on this month with multiple stakeholders throughout the city, including we've invited representatives from the county, the Drainage District, the Farm Bureau to participate in a collaborative approach to a solution.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate the work that's been going on to get some resolution to this issue. Do we have any other questions from committee members?
No.
Okay, I would just like to bring this to the attention of the committee. There is an Assemblyman, Robert Rivas, and he's pushing a bill, and there's Assembly Bill 377, California Clean Water Act. And maybe we can have some sort of a study session at the Public Works Committee on that item that might enlighten us or help us or help all parties. Maybe not, just somebody to check into that because it might benefit these residents that have been working there and the volunteers, as Ms. Cooper has mentioned, the Channel Islands Neighborhood Council Clean Water Team, the people that have volunteered, trained, they go out, they take it, and granted, they live there. But by the same token, we have had mention of volunteers throughout the city of Oxnard. These are another range of volunteers. Some people like to take credit for all the volunteer activism. There's a lot of individual, non-affiliated groups that volunteer to help the city of Oxnard in a lot of ways. Do we have a recommendation on this matter by the committee?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that that the Public Works Transportation Committee recommend that the City Council receive and file the report on the water quality monitoring efforts at the Channel Islands Harbor and provide staff with any other comments. So that would be my motion, is to send it to the City Council.
Second.
Okay, Mayor and Councilmember Lopez, would you consider an amendment to consider bringing a study session on the California Clean Water Act on this item?
Yes, I think it would benefit us all. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, let us look into that just to see exactly where it is in the legislative phase, and then to see if what we even think about it before we commit to a full-on study session.
Well, let me show that recommend that staff look into it and bring it back, see if it's appropriate.
Okay, thank you for the clarification, and thank you, Mayor, for that.
Thank you.
Okay, Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Lopez,
Yes.
Chair Perillo,
Yes.
Mayor Zaragoza.
Yes.
Motion passes with amendment. Vote is 3-0. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving to the next item, items for future agendas. Does the committee members have any suggestions for future agenda items?
Mr. Chair, yeah, if I could.
Madam Lopez, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. So I think there's been talk, and I'm not sure if we have heard directly from our federal representatives on the discussions in Congress about possible earmarks. And it's my understanding that they might be, they're waiting for details, but I think it would be great for us to be prepared for that possibility on what we might be able to request.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, potentially. Yeah,
Go ahead, Mayor.
I've
Go
been
ahead,
asking the city manager the same question. So, Madam Lopez, Councilman Lopez, right. I think it's important that we find out what kind of, what we're looking at anyway, funding wise.
Okay, thank you. I have a request. With the shortfall of rain that we've had in the situation in the state of California, and I believe that Ventura County is still in a water shortage situation based on what's happened in the last few years. If we can get a report back on the local water restrictions, if we're going to continue them, if we're going to increase them, we're going to expand them. Number two, the local water supply. And number three, the state water/snow conditions to let us know, because they're calling for rain tonight, but we're in March and we didn't get much this year and it does not look good. And a comment that was made earlier about the issue of the weather changing and how it could impact Channel Islands Harbor. If the weather gets hot and we don't have a lot of flushing of that thing, we're going to have probably more problems. But I think this would be a good idea to bring everybody up to speed, because no matter what, life doesn't get very far if you don't have water, and the city is going to be facing some serious issues with the water. So those are only my requests. Any final statements by committee members? None. Okay. With that, this meeting is adjourned, and please, ladies and gentlemen, stay safe with respect to the mask and social distance. Thank you.
Mr.
Oh, one more comment.
Go ahead, Madam Clerk. I'm sorry.
It's
Ms.
okay.
Lopez. Go ahead.
It's
Go
okay.
ahead, Councilwoman Lopez.
It's okay. It's just three of us. You can't go wrong. Yeah, one really just final announcement. We have the Southwinds Youth Center that is open for our residents to take advantage of if they're eligible to get the COVID-19 vaccine. Please consider signing up if you're eligible. This is a way for our community to be protected, for our families to be protected. So I really encourage anyone who is interested or even has any questions about it to contact the city, and you can sign up. It's free, it's safe, and it's located at the Southwinds Youth Center from 10 to 5, Monday through Friday.
Thank you for that comment. I will add this. I was able to get a shot last Thursday. The arm was sore a little bit the day after. After that, that was it. There were no side effects. There was a lot of people getting shots, and I got my shot at the fairgrounds. No side effects that were visible. Very smooth, very safe. Very happy with the procedure. And ladies and gentlemen, if you have the opportunity to get the shot, please consider getting the shot for yourself and the people, family, and people you don't even know. This is important. Mayor, do you have a comment?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I just want to add to Councilman Lopez's, that your efforts right there, again, I want to share with you at Southwinds has been fantastic, because there's a lot of people getting their inoculation there. And also, I think last time that we met, you mentioned what is the time limit after you get your second shot? I've heard from the CDC, 2 weeks, and you can go ahead and gather with other individuals and so forth. So just for information, that's CDC according to CNN.
That's right. They finally, they must have heard what you said last week, because they
That's
came
right.
out with new guidance saying that after you've been fully vaccinated after 2 weeks, you can visit with your
You can visit.
grandkids.
There you go.
They,
Anyway.
they were listening, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And with that, unless anybody has anything else to say. Nope. Okay. With that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, committee.
So.